may be seated. In the Greek-speaking world, when the Gospel of Mark was written down, there was a particular description of the universe that almost everything else rested upon. It was laid out in one of Plato's dialogues a few centuries before the birth of Jesus. It told the story of how the heavens came to be, how human beings were made, what the nature and order of created things really is. Among educated people in the Hellenistic world, it was the most read work after Homer in Greek, and has had, according to one scholar, the longest continuous influence of any of the dialogues of the West. It affected what almost everybody in Plato's world thought about the shape of the cosmos for hundreds, if not thousands, of years to a certain degree. But you should know, Plato's universe was a carefully stratified place with a clear hierarchy. From the highest realm of pure forms down through the less perfect physical world, there was the demiurge, or creator, who created and instructed the gods to make human souls. They did so out of some leftover lower-grade parts from the world soul, we're told. And these sad, malfunctioning bodies we have to carry those souls around in, well, obviously, they're the work of lesser gods yet. The point being that some things are a higher order of being in this cosmology, and some things are very, very low. And that's just the way it is. Some things just matter more than others. Sorry about that. You didn't come in here for a lesson in Greek philosophy. And I'm hoping someone in this room who actually knows something about such things will correct what I've got wrong at coffee hour if you're still interested. I'm lifting most of this from a book by a liturgical scholar named Gordon Lathrop, but it gets interesting right about here. At least it does to me. You see, according to Plato, human beings were not all created equal either. Not at all. He thought women, for instance, were just recycled cowardly males. Men were a higher order. And among men, one order was the highest of them all, the philosopher. I know, it was a rather self-serving move, but there you have it. The dome of the philosopher's head was actually a little replica of the dome of the heavens, and he was that rare, enlightened kind of person who could take the universe in through his senses and actually comprehend it. Only the philosopher had the capacity to order the cosmos rightly in his mind so that he could choose the good life and live it well. And one sense was more important than any other. One sense was crucial to his understanding, the sense of sight. To be an ordinary man, much less a woman, was to be blind. And in Plato's universe, the literally and metaphorically blind were simply lesser orders of being. Those gifts of sight that are lesser, he wrote. Why should we sing of them here? Those very gifts, even if they are lamented with wailing by the blind person who's not a philosopher, are certainly lamented in vain. Sorry there, blind, ordinary human being. You're wasting your time even lamenting that you can't see. That's just the way it is. Get over it. You're just not all that important. Wait, I've been rambling on quite a while now and haven't mentioned the title of Plato's dialogue, have I? Its title's the name of its main character, that enlightened philosopher who sees everything, understands the structure of the cosmos, and is wise enough to choose the good life. His name was Timaeus. As Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. We took a minute to get here this morning, here being the actual gospel lesson we're supposed to be considering, but this may be a story that needs some setup, right? You wouldn't read a story about, say, somebody named son of Einstein and not wonder about whether that name could be about more than keeping the offspring sorted out. As Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jerusalem, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. Bar Timaeus. Bar, you may know, means son in Hebrew, but Timaeus is not a Hebrew name. It's Greek. Something's up. And if you're still not quite convinced this detail might matter to the story, consider that of all the people Jesus heals in the book of Mark, there's only one whose name we learn: Bartimaeus. Consider also that this healing sits right in where the story turns from Jesus' teaching and healing ministry in Galilee and heads up toward Jerusalem and the cross. It's at this pivotal moment that Jesus stops and helps the son of Timaeus regain his sight. This Bartimaeus, of course, is the perfect inverse of Plato's. He's not the wise, all-seeing, enlightened philosopher, free to choose the good life. Bartimaeus is blind, sitting by the road, begging for a little mercy from a man he'd heard might be able to make him well. Bartimaeus doesn't even have enough shame to shut up when the people around him try to quiet him down. He's everything, in other words, that Timaeus is not. He's someone whose life in Plato's universe amounts to just about nothing at all. To feel the force of a story like this one, I think we need to re-enter that Hellenistic world which Jesus lived in as well, in a way. We need to inhabit a world, and I realize this will be quite a stretch for us. We need to imagine a world in which the person who's wise and who can see and who can choose the good life is the person that God or the gods are most pleased with. A person of a different strata and order of being than someone who sits and sees nothing, somebody whose hope is only mercy. And when we enter that world, which maybe isn't as different from ours as we'd like to believe, the story kind of tells itself. Jesus stops. He inverts the cosmos, not only by noticing and reaching out to a blind beggar as if he were someone who actually mattered. He says to that man as his sight is restored, "Go, your faith has made you well." Did you notice that? Jesus doesn't say, "I have pity on you, you poor outcast creature, and so I healed you." No, he says, "Your faith, Bartimaeus, something within you is what's made you well today." Maybe Bartimaeus' sight wasn't something Jesus imparted on him, but something already alive within him that Jesus gave him access to again. "Go, son of Timaeus, your faith has made you well." So what could have given Jesus eyes to see this Bartimaeus as a human brother of the highest order? You'd be right to point out that Jesus' people also had a problematic creation account that they lived by as well, as do Christians. It's a story that's also been used to make women into lesser beings, gullible temptresses, vulnerable to the arguments of crafty serpents, and even worse than that. How we read and tell our stories matters too, and even our most sacred ones can be used to do harm rather than heal. And what we believe in our bones about the created order of things still matters to the way we inhabit this cosmos every day. And the truth it seems like Jesus was accessing in his own tradition was that creation is actually a radical, gratuitous gift of a loving God. A creator who did not make a stratified universe, but one who pronounced each aspect of this created order good from the very beginning. The light and the darkness, the dome of the sky and the waters beneath it, the land and the seas and the plants yielding seeds of every kind. God saw these for what they were and announced that they're good, all of them. So were the swarms of living creatures, from the birds of the air to the monsters of the sea, we're told. God blessed them, told them to multiply, to make even more of their goodness in the world. Same for cattle and creeping things and wild animals of every kind. Same for us. Same for humankind. I see your goodness, God says, before anything's disrupted or suffer damage in the wild freedom God also entrusted to it all. Before things become stratified, alienated, estranged, at odds, they are each declared unequivocally, unambiguously good in the cosmos of Jesus. Jesus' tradition also had an account of how things went wrong, an account of how much damage even good creatures can do to one another when we forget our original blessedness. Damage that blind Bartimaeus must have suffered every single day, and which might have led him to believe that his damaged and diminished self was just part of the way things were created to be. One cosmic story he lived in said he was a lower order of being, after all. Jesus met this son of Timaeus on the road and invited him into a different story about the way things are, and helped him regain access to a healing, original goodness that Bartimaeus still carried within himself as he did. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, is how a priest named Gerard Manley Hopkins would tell Jesus' story, the story Jesus still invites us into. When we baptize a child or a fully grown human being, we acknowledge that we all are still being formed by a false story of a stratified cosmos all the time. Our baptismal promise is to renounce all those powers and that story and try to live as a people of Jesus who trust in the dear original freshness deep down all things, and in whoever we meet and in whatever ways we can, bring it to the surface of our own lives and of the lives of people around us. What we believe about the created order matters. It matters to the way we inhabit the world every day of our lives. What story do you live by? What story tells you of the way things are, how they're meant to be? What healing in ourselves and in our world might result if we, like that son of Timaeus, roadside one day, walked away from all the false and lesser stories and into the good and blessed cosmos of Jesus.